You had a purpose before anyone had an opinion. That's one of my favorite mantras. Before anyone judged you, praised you, or doubted you, or tried to tell you who you should be, you already carried something original within you. A unique wiring, natural gifts, genuine curiosities that pointed you toward the life you were meant to explore. What I love is that no matter how loud the chatter gets in the mind, no matter how thick the fog over the mind becomes, the seer, the self within you, never forgets itself. Purpose was there before the first opinion, before the first label, before the first expectation ever landed on you. And when you strip everything back and connect the dots in your own backstory, you'll see it. And you'll see that purpose was always the deep driver. And opinions, or what I like to call the commentary, are just surface noise. In this episode, I'm going to break things into 4 parts so you can make the number one shift where your inner critic stops calling the shots. Part 1 is purpose before opinion. Naturally, if you are pursuing your potential and you're living the life you want to be living, leading it with conviction, or standing for something, doing anything outside of what's normal, someone's going to have something to say about it. Especially now, opinions are everywhere. And if you're in Australia, tall poppy syndrome comes free with the air we breathe. We are all bombarded with more information in a day than we could process in a month, maybe even 3 months. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. And if you don't filter it, it will drown you. That's where another mantra of mine comes in. Feed your focus and starve your distractions. And I say that because the loudest boos, they rarely come from the arena. They come from the cheapest seats, the sidelines, and often from social media, but even family and friends. And if you let those voices in, they can take you off your game completely. Now, let's be clear also, feedback is not the enemy. In fact, some of the most valuable growth in my life has come from critique and feedback. It's shown me my blind spots. It's sharpened my character. It's refined my communication and made me much more resilient. And I needed it because I had to leave behind a lot. Codependency, the people pleaser, the nice guy. And the truth is that if everyone does agree with you, you're probably not saying anything that matters or owning your own voice. So you can't internalize every voice, and especially not from people who aren't living the life you want from those cheaper seats. If they don't carry the character, the discipline, or the results that you admire, then why would you hand them the steering wheel? Feeding your focus and starving your distractions, that is about turning inward and building from inside out. And we do this because the world will continue to be uncertain. And the only thing certain is how you show up and take care of what's in your control right now. This moves us to part 2. So we had purpose before opinion, and now we have part 2, which is the turn inward. And this is about understanding that the most powerful critic isn't external, it's internal. It's not the comments, it's not the headlines, it's not the whispers. It's the voice you carry when everything is quiet. Because what you believe deep down shapes how you show up. Your thoughts, they set the frame, and the frame reflects back to you perfectly in your reality. For years, I battled with validation, with the fear of being misunderstood. I was walking on eggshells around everyone. And that's why I personally chose to give a TEDx talk on that topic. And that stage, it was my goal for a long time because of what it represented to me. I didn't just choose a trending topic just to amass views. It was a pattern that was quietly destroying my confidence. Because the reality is that if you can't master external critics, then it's largely because you haven't mastered the internal one. And you can't do it until you've mastered it there. Lao Tzu frames this perfectly in his timeless wisdom, the second most published literature of all time, Tao Te Ching. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. You can't master external critics until you've mastered the inner one. So when critics and opinions, they get loud, there are 3 impacts that you need to be aware of in part 2 where opinions get loud. And these impacts can really affect the mind. The first is cognitive dissonance. This is the mental squeeze. And I'd say it's the most important because the inner critic loves to back up externalized voices. Basically, cognitive dissonance is what happens when your mind holds two conflicting beliefs, values, or behaviors at the same time. And the tension between them, it feels uncomfortable. Psychologists describe this as mental discomfort. And in that discomfort, the brain will do anything to resolve the tension. Here's an example. You tell yourself you're confident, but you shrink in conversations. I don't want to sound arrogant. I'll speak up when I know exactly what to say. Better to stay quiet than risk sounding dumb. Another example is that you value honesty, but you dodge telling your partner the full truth. I don't want to hurt their feelings. It's kinder and it's for our own good if I leave it out. It'll just start an argument. The gap between what you believe and what you do is dissonance. And it's exhausting. I know this because I used to bend myself into mental gymnastics to match someone else's expectations. I know that the brain hates that tension and it scrambles to justify and rationalize. But here's the key. If you lean into the discomfort instead of avoiding it, dissonance becomes a compass. It shows you where your current reality doesn't align with your deeper values. Seen this way, dissonance isn't a flaw, it's actually a signal to you. And if you pay attention, it becomes your fuel for change. The second impact on our mind that we have to be conscious of, other than cognitive dissonance, is our mental emotional load. Or just blanket, we can call it emotional load. I call this the hijack. Critics, both internal and external, they stir up emotion. Because sometimes validation, it can feel good. Approval, agreement, it gives us a break from our own inner voice. But often, opinions steal your peace and hijack your mind. As men, we often underestimate how much emotional weight that we carry. Because the truth is, social pressure and the hunger for acceptance can cloud your purpose very fast if you're not careful. So we have to be conscious of this emotional hijacking. The third impact on our mind is self-image and identity. I call this the deep cut. The third and final impact on our mind that we have to be conscious of is self-image and identity. I call this the deep cut. Finally, inner critics hit at the level of our identity. Opinions, internal and external, can intertwine with how you see yourself, your abilities, your value, your character, your appearance, and even how you think others see you. And when your own sense of self is fragile, the wrong comment can trigger overreactions, poor decisions, or even self-sabotage. That's why managing both outer critics and the inner critic is crucial, because they don't just affect how you feel in the moment. They shape how you see yourself, and how you see yourself determines the life you build. It's just that important. Now, part 4 is the shift. This is where we start to move things. It's the practical application of all 3 parts into the final stage. This is the key to making the number 1 shift. You have to understand that every one of us have a narrative that we tell ourselves. Every man has a voice in his head. You're not enough. Don't screw this up. They'll see you fail. They'll abandon you if you fall short. That is the inner critic. It feels like truth because it actually uses your own voice, but it's not. It is a coping mechanism that's running on old fears disguised as wisdom. And if you don't learn how to deal with it, it will quietly direct and run your whole life, because it was born in moments where love, safety, or acceptance felt conditional. And it doesn't want to ruin your life. It wants to protect you and help you succeed. But the problem is that it's stuck running on outdated instructions. You can think of it like a rogue marketing team that's micromanaging your image so you don't get rejected from other people. It's running a shame-fueled system on stale data, outdated data. And at the same time, a perfectionist is in control, tallying all the flaws up so that you never look flawed. It's not evil, it's just misinformed, and it's been steering for too long. I see the inner critic as the loudest internal gatekeeper that stands between you and your authentic voice. And we just have to be aware of the trap. That's how we get through this. Most men think that they need to crush, silence, or ignore the inner critic. When they try and approach it to crush it, They try to dominate that voice with bravado or overcompensation. But when you do that, it only pushes the insecurity deeper. When you try to silence it through numbing it out, through work, distraction, or avoidance, the inner critic waits for those quiet moments, and then it will get louder in those moments. When you try to ignore it and you try to pretend it isn't there, the critic works in the background. It steers the show, and it shapes the choices that you don't even realize you're making. So the irony is that each of those moments gives the critic more power. Fighting it feeds it, and avoiding it reinforces it. Pretending it's not there lets it run unchecked. So the reality is that you don't actually need to silence your inner critic. You don't even need to defeat it, because confidence doesn't come from crushing this critic or obeying it. The shift is to stop seeing the critic as a flaw. It is just a coping mechanism. It's terrified that you'll be let down, you'll be hurt, or experience loss if you show up as real. That's why it pushes you to perfection. I know this firsthand. I know this very, very well. You think, if I can just get it right, no one's going to reject me or call me too much or not enough. It's actually on your side. It wants your success, but it needs your leadership. That's the shift that helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and men like you move from second guessing to speaking with real conviction. And when you see the inner critic calling the shots, through the witnessing of it, the awareness, you ask, what part of me is this voice trying to protect right now? That is the focusing question. When you become aware of the inner critic steering the ship, or with its hands on the wheel, driving the car, what part of me is the voice trying to protect right now? And what that does, that question, is it objectifies the voice and puts you in the driver's seat calling the shots. That's the question that lowers its defenses and puts you back into leadership. And suddenly, you're not just that boy inside of you avoiding rejection. You're the man that holds the frame. So again, remember, the number one shift is not to fight it. Don't obey it. See it. Ask yourself, what part of me is this voice trying to protect right now? We must lower its defenses and guide it. And when you stop trying to defeat it and start leading beyond it, you reclaim the voice you were always meant to speak with. A voice that connects, it influences, and it carries authority without ever needing to shout. If this hits home, don't just let it sit in your head. Do something with it. Start with the Confidence Kickstart, which is a free tool that I built to help you cut through the noise and quiet the inner critic. It'll help you build conviction without faking confidence too. That's your foundation. Grab that in the show notes. If you're ready for bigger moves, the Prosperity Mastermind is where we uncover blind spots and we dissolve quiet patterns that are holding you back so you can step into the impact that you're built for. If one-to-one is more of your preference, you don't like group or cohort, then book a master plan call with me. I've got very limited places for that, where we will map out your vision, we'll get clear on your priorities, and we'll lay down a path to real measurable change together. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to start unpacking something that takes this even further, and why the most dangerous person isn't the loudest or the most confident. It's the most articulate. You won't want to miss that episode. I'll see you then.